Jake Paul's California mansion has been raided by the FBI, multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas.
When names like Anthony Joshua are mentioned, they represent more than a single moment. They represent an idea. An idea of what happens when controlled environments vanish and a fighter is forced to face someone who cannot be negotiated with, scripted around, or protected by contractual safety nets. Elite competition exposes weaknesses that marketing can only conceal for so long.
Jake Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The volatility of this narrative is what keeps audiences watching. Every accusation leads to another clip, another interview, another denial, and another breakdown, creating a feedback loop where doubt itself becomes entertainment. Controversy turns into the product, driving attention, engagement, and non-stop debate across boxing and MMA media. From an AVD perspective, the story works because it blends fear, scandal, authority figures, and unanswered questions, pulling viewers forward with the promise that the next revelation will either confirm their suspicions or completely overturn what they thought they understood.
Because of the weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua's a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional.
At its core, this story is not just about Jake Paul as an individual. It reflects a broader cultural tension between traditional combat sports values and influencer-era promotion, where control, virality, and optics can overpower the brutal honesty that once defined elite fighting. Whether Jake Paul can ever escape this cloud of credibility depends not on words or online responses, but on choices. If future fights prioritize risk over safety, transparency over control, and competition over spectacle, perception can change. But if the same patterns continue, the audience may conclude that the illusion, once cracked, was never truly real.
A couple of hours there's been some reports about an apparent leaked script. Have you seen this?
Move on. If people think that he's going to do a quick two-step and do this, and this, I hope he just goes out and takes his head clean off with the first punch and lets him know who Tommy Fury actually is. There's one interview, and I'm going to name it now, Lyndon Arthur, absolute fantastic, that man. I don't read that much on social media because it's all bullshit, but Lyndon Arthur, thank you very much. From me to you, you said something about Tommy being a proper fighter, can really punch, one of the hardest punches he's been in. Now for Lyndon Arthur to go and say that, Lyndon Arthur's a proper hard, tough man, we all know that. So Lyndon, respect, thank you.
The shift in the conversation around Jake Paul did not come from a single punch or a single night. It came from a collective realization among boxing and MMA fans that spectacle, branding, and selective matchmaking had gradually replaced competitive purity. When figures like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Oscar de la Hoya, Dana White, and Michael Bisping entered the discussion, fans began to see Paul less as a fighter and more as a symbol of an engineered era where narratives are promoted harder than merit.
At any point, did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to, you know, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
In the post-fight press conference.
In combat sports history, real reckonings are rarely clean or cinematic. Jake Paul's story exists in that grey zone where public perception, long-standing skepticism, and years of online debate collide. His rise was never just about wins and losses, but about how those wins were packaged, explained, defended, and amplified, until fans began questioning whether they were watching competition or content disguised as combat. Accusations of rigged fights did not emerge in isolation. Respected fighters like Deontay Wilder publicly questioned the legitimacy of Paul's bouts, Oscar de la Hoya echoed sentiments many insiders quietly shared, and even casual viewers noticed patterns involving glove sizes, round lengths, opponent selection, and promotional control that felt closer to exhibitions than traditional professional boxing.
Are you on performance-enhancing drugs?
If taking Viagra counts, then yes.
I'm gonna need a yes or a no.
No.
That's true.
Lucky you.
Dr. Stuart Fisher, author of Little Book of Big Medical Emergency.
The narrative intensified when Jake Paul himself admitted to easing off in certain moments. On its own, that statement might sound like sportsmanship, but in context it fueled skepticism. In elite boxing, fighters are not expected to manage danger for their opponents. When that admission spread online, it reinforced the belief that some fights were designed for optics rather than settled through pure competitive necessity. Drug testing became another flashpoint when Dana White publicly demanded transparency, not as gossip, but as a challenge to Paul's claims of legitimacy. The absence of independently verified test results allowed critics to fill the silence with speculation, linking physical changes, past resistance to strict anti-doping clauses, and insider commentary into a narrative that refused to fade.
Publicly stated that I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you, you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years. And that thing that you came out with today, nobody on earth thinks that you really wrote that. You're too stupid.
Medical opinions, social media reactions, and commentary from figures like Dylan Dennis added further fuel. Not because accusations alone proved guilt, but because the accumulation of voices created an environment where denial felt weaker than disclosure. Every refusal to provide documentation became, in the eyes of fans, another unanswered question added to an already crowded ledger. Promotional responses from MVP executives relied heavily on legal language and defamation warnings. While common in high-stakes business, those tactics often backfire in fight culture, where transparency earns respect. Threatening lawsuits does little to reassure fans that outcomes are organic. It signals that image protection has taken priority over accountability.
That I brought it up wants to do testing. And he wants to do a set date before the fight. Okay? So he did the cycle, he did whatever, and now he's gonna try to take a piss test and clear it and be like, oh, I'm clean. That doesn't count. Okay? It doesn't count. With the money that he has, you can have a doctor clean your system in over 24 hours. Cheeto Vera just went on that podcast and said, you know that. So him doing this is another scam that he does. He's a bullshit artist. He just lies. Everybody knows he's on juice. He's admitted taking peptides. There's doctors that have him in the office saying we're giving him peptides on their website. So like, it's just bullshit. And I don't even care about the steroids thing. It's just like, what are we doing here? He has every advantage. He gets to pick the refs. He gets to pick the fucking judge. It's like, come on.
Dylan Dennis, who had his own contentious history with Jake Paul, posted photos of
Dylan Dennis, who has his own long-standing feud with Jake Paul, posted photos that reignited controversy. Michael Bisping's criticism carried more weight precisely because of its calm, experienced tone. He pointed out that Paul's opponents were often retired, aging, or celebrity adjacent, and that the one fight against a peer-level boxer, Tommy Fury, ended in defeat. That loss remains a central reference point for critics who argue that legitimacy cannot be claimed without consistently facing prime, motivated professionals.
There has never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds to knock out Jake Paul.
The FBI raid narrative added yet another layer to public perception. Even when charges are dropped or incidents remain unresolved, repeated proximity to controversy shapes belief. In the fight world, reputation matters almost as much as record. Each headline compounds the sense that chaos follows Jake Paul wherever spectacle is being monetised.
for being in the public eye, but today YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
Speaker One's underlying argument is not that every fight was fake or that every accusation is true, but that the structure surrounding Jake Paul's boxing career appears carefully engineered. From opponent selection to promotional framing, the environment often feels designed to simulate authenticity rather than earn it through the standards that traditionally build trust in combat sports. Fans are asked to believe, yet rarely given the evidence that belief is normally built upon. Legal proceedings may continue for months or years, but healing does not follow court timelines. For Anthony Joshua, grief moves independently of rulings or verdicts. Even if justice is pursued, there is no decision capable of restoring what was lost or reversing the moment when everything changed. Gerald Miller's emotional response adds another dimension, reminding us that even strained relationships dissolve in the face of mortality. Tragedy has a way of erasing rivalry and exposing something more instinctive, empathy, when the stakes become unmistakably human. As this story unfolds, fans are forced to confront their own role. Clicks, comments, and outrage fuel narratives that can intensify pain rather than illuminate truth. Voices like Johnny Nelson's urge restraint, reminding audiences that behind every update is a real person struggling to survive something unimaginable. Anthony Joshua's future in boxing will always be debated, but his future as a man carrying loss matters far more. Whether he ever fights again or not, this chapter will shape how he approaches life, relationships, and responsibility long after the ring fades from view. The broader lesson for combat sports is uncomfortable but necessary. If the culture continues to reward recklessness without reflection, more lives risk being caught in the fallout. Figures like Eddie Hearn and Tyson Fury appear to be steering the conversation back toward accountability, emphasizing that this is not about choosing heroes or villains.